This is the Red Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
Over 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada. Streaming live on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is May the 30th, 2024, and this is episode 452 of Workshop Radio. How is everyone out there this evening? What a great day. Little bit on the drizzly and cold side here, but it is Canada, and that is what we have to deal with. So let's open up with a rule to live by, because this week in prepping is this Thursday, which is today. So spun the big wheel. We got a random number generator this week of rule number 27. And this is one that I have inadvertently, or I don't know, maybe it's the old man in me. I think I was born an old man, but be efficient, not fast. Now, this is something that becomes more and more important the older you get, but it is a rule I have lived by my entire life. Instead of trying to rush through something, I always try to find the ways to make things more efficient and therefore faster. It doesn't mean I have to work faster. I don't have to work harder. I was always the type of guy, when I would say carry laminate floor into a job, I would try to find the exact most ideal, most efficient path to get it in there. Because if I can shave 2 steps off of every trip, that is way better than trying to run fast with it. And that's exactly where this, I learned the Bruce Lee motto later on down the road, but it is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And yes, the more efficient you become at something, of course, the faster you're going to become. And many, many, many times over the last few years, when I was doing a project in the backyard, or especially over at the daycare, folks would come in and they would ask, how in the hell did you get that entire deck built in a day? And it's not about rushing. It's not about being fast. It's about figuring out the most efficient and easiest way to do a project. And when you figure that out, when you nail that down, again, being efficient is way better than being fast. And by being efficient, you are going to be faster. So I hope everybody enjoyed that rule. I've been working through the 30-some rules to live by randomly each week for you. It's a good way to open up the show. It's some clippable content for everyone out there. And if anybody out there has any rules they want to live by, or any rules out there that you do live by, send them on my way. I would gladly share them for you. All right, let's take a look at the comments and the community this evening so far. I see Jeremy one step closer. I don't know if I mentioned it yet, but we tried Jeremy's Mexican candies he sent us. We did record it, and they were candy, that's for sure. But no, thanks, Jeremy. Good to see you. Digger, we got you in here. Great to see you. Wired Edge Workshop, and Mr. Sam Russell. Good to see you in here, brother. Good, good, good. All right. So it's Thursday. We are knee deep in this week in prepping. Going to be couple little changes. I think I could be incorrect about this, but it looks like Willow is moving on from doing Sunshine News, at least a little bit. She's going to be moving into doing an audio only version, maybe a longer form podcast, I do believe. So for the foreseeable future, we won't have the Sunshine News segments, which is sad because I really enjoy Willow. She's great. She's a hard worker at it. But what we will have is a monthly segment going forward with Thesia on the Cookbook of the Collapse. And if anybody else has a segment that they would be interested in submitting on a weekly or monthly basis for the show, I'm down for kind of entertaining just about any different concept that you might have that fits within this growing gamut of topics we cover here, guys. So, all right, with that, let's jump on over.
If anyone dies while you are kept in your fallout room, move the body to another room in the house.
The time has come for Stranger Than Fiction. All right, guys, let's dive into Stranger Than Fiction. And what this is, for those who are new here, and there's always seems to be somebody new every so often, Those who are new here, this is where we take a look at those things that are stranger than fiction, the world of fact. Almost sounds like the Twilight Zone now, doesn't it? And this is where we take a look at prepper-related news within reason around the world, things that we can learn from, lessons we can pull from, and in this case, an article written all about preppers. So let's dive in. First off, this one here is something I hadn't heard of, and actually a couple of the articles this evening, guys, are things that I had not even, they weren't even on my radar. And this is one of them. I had no idea that Mexico was in such hard shape with their water situation at the moment. But let's check it out. Mexico. This one comes from abcnews.com. Mexico's drought, heat wave, and water shortages are so bad, even the police are protesting. Imagine that. That's not good. And I'm just going to shout out as well, guys, so you know, we are also in the vertical feed over on, in the shorts feed on YouTube. And I see Byron was over there. Now he's jumping back and forth. I see Gunfighter Concealment in Hardway, Alaska. Good to see you guys. And I hope you enjoy seeing the show up and down vertically as opposed to horizontally. We'll give it a shot either way and see what works. But trying to bring in some more eyeballs and get people definitely interested. All right. Mexico City. In recent months, residents of some Mexico City neighborhoods have regularly taken to form in human chains to block boulevards to demand water. In April, in April, complaints about contaminated water sparked a week-long crisis in one upscale neighborhood. Now, no offense whatsoever, but if folks in Mexico are complaining about the water quality, things have got to be really, really bad. I mean, that has been an ongoing issue that we've all known about for many, many years. And if it's that bad, whew, boy, I tell you, not a good thing. The officers, so normally police seek to redirect traffic, as they say, but on Wednesday, some of them decided they were going to block traffic too, because they were so fed up with what's going on down there. The officers stood blocking 6 lanes of traffic, saying their barracks hadn't had water for a week. So the people who were supposed to be empowered by the state to look after the law are not being taken care of by the state. Imagine that. I know, hard to believe, right? So the officers, they said, we don't have water in our bathrooms, one female officer said. She wouldn't give her name because of fear of reprisals. Makes sense. But adding that the conditions in the barracks were intolerable. They make us sleep on the floor, she said. So sleep on the floor, no water to flush the toilets. The bosses, this is the best. If you guys know the old quote, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Well, the bosses have water in their offices, but we're not allowed to go in there, said the female officer. They don't give us solutions. Today they brought in a water truck after they saw the news media show up. Imagine that. So they started talking to the news and boom, so problem solved. A little bit anyway. The bosses have water in their offices, but we're not allowed to go in there, said one female. They don't give us solutions, but they brought in a water truck after the news showed up. In the midst of record temperatures and a severe drought, many buildings in the capital have to get water brought in by tanker trucks, but they have been in short supply and are expensive. No shit. Imagine that, having to bring in water being more expensive than being able to capture it locally. Now, I mean, like I said, listen to this, and it gets worse. I didn't know. This is very similar to what South Africa went through 3 or 4 years ago now. 40% of the country's dams are below 20% capacity, and another 40% are below 50% full. Mexico City has been forced to reduce water supplies because the reservoirs that feed the city are drying up. Some stores are running out of mineral water. Nationwide authorities have had to truck in water for everything from hospitals to firefighting teams. I never caught that when I was prepping the show, guys, but firefighting teams, they have to truck in water for firefighters. That ain't good. Low levels at the hydroelectric dams have contributed to power blackouts in some part of the country. Even the largest convenience store in Mexico says it's limiting purchases of ice to just 2 or 3 bags per customer in some places. It's a little scary. This is not that far from home. I mean, yes, I know it's south and, south of me, of course, but it's a bad situation. So what does one do in a bad drought like this? I mean, rain catchment, I suppose, is a good thing. Water storage is another thing. But the biggest problem with water is you can't dehydrate it. I mean, you can, but you know how it is. There's no compacting water for long-term storage. It is what it is. It's the one true resource that, you can't shrink in any way and get any value out of it. Anytime you attempt to shrink it, well, you all know what's going to happen. So, I mean, this is getting to the point where they're limiting ice at the stores. They're running out of bottled water. They're trucking in water for important situations such as firefighting. I mean, how crazy is that? And the hydroelectric dams, so what is that? 60% are below 50% capacity, and 40% are below 20%. It's horrible. It's sad. There's not a ton of solutions, but I mean, the worst part of it is just, what would you do in the middle of something like that? That's what I was thinking reading this article, was simply, what would I do? How desperate would you be not being able to get water like that? I mean, the lady cop there said, her bosses have water. I mean, that makes it even worse. That's like a slap to the face. That's like saying, I can't feed my kids, but you know what? I go to work and I get to watch my boss eat a foot-long Subway sub. Like, it's awful. So as much as we can, store water, and, underground storage would be great. Rain storage, IBC totes, cisterns, whatever you could do, plan, and it might get to the point where a person just has to leave, because I don't know how much further you could go with a situation like this. It sounds dire. We've got a pretty bad situation down in Chris Dixon's area of the land. Reading between the lines with the news stories and the ongoing rain we've had, they're not quite as dire as they were even a month ago, but it doesn't mean it can't take a turn for the worse really quick. So anyway, just an article to be aware of, guys, that maybe you hadn't heard about either, because I haven't. I don't know how we can live so close to Mexico, and I didn't know there was a massive drought going on there. So anyway, story to share with you. Let's shoot back over into the comments here. Hey, a few more people in. Ryan Pippin, great to see you. Happy Friday Eves, humans, he says. Gunfighter Concealment says, can't thumbs up on the other live. I'm not sure how that works with the shorts feed. I don't know, but I haven't looked too close into it. We got Bud Conkle in here again. Good evening, all, he says. Great to see you. Byron Roberts says he hates rehydrating water. It's so time consuming and energy consuming. I mean, the amount of power it takes to rehydrate water is somebody has to come up with something better than that. Somebody can bend the laws of physics to be able to rehydrate water in a more efficient manner, I think. And Josh C., glad to make it. Glad you did make it. Good to see you. All right. So next story, folks. This was a cool one. This is from CTV News in Canada, Canadian Television Network, something along those lines. And they've been around forever. I grew up on the East Coast. It used to be called Atlantic Television out there, but they got bought out, conglomerated into what the mass media is in Canada today. But this is a good practical article that is prepping advice for basically everybody out there. And it's how to cool down without air conditioning. And the reason I wanted to share this was, this is something that Becky and I went through in Tennessee. I mean, it really was a struggle for us, because we were, especially her just coming down there, was acclimating it to it. But it'd been a long time since we had slept somewhere without air conditioning in hot, humid weather. And so it was fun trying to come up with some solutions. For us, the big one was taking some ice out of the cooler, putting it in a Ziploc bag, wrapping it in a towel, and putting it kind of on our chest and letting the wind blow across us. That was the way to really cool ourselves down as quickly as possible. Felt a lot better than just sitting there stewing in the heat, that's for sure. So I picked some of the top tips they had. And I mean, the first one, stay hydrated. Everybody's heard that, but when you're hot and flushed, hydrating yourself is first and foremost. And there's something in here. This is something I'm a goof, but I prefer water at room temperature. Always have. Just easier to drink for some weird reason. But this expert here said the temperature of the water doesn't matter since your body will heat it. He added, if your body is suffering from heat and needs to cool itself, it can't do that without enough moisture, since the body cools itself via sweating. Makes sense, but if you don't think about it, yep, if you're getting hot and you're not adding water, you're just going to get even hotter, because you're going to be like a dog who can't pant. You're not going to get the temperature out of your system. Take a cold shower or bath. Taking a cold shower or bath helps cool your body by lowering your core temperature. And again, that was kind of similar to what Becky and I did with the ice packs. You get it up here around your chest, and that's, if you guys ever took swimming lessons and they had the help position where they would tell you to huddle up and keep all the areas that would lose heat the fastest warm in the water, well, you can always reverse that and try to do things to cool those areas down quicker, because that's the fastest way to lower your core temperature. Use cold wash rags on your neck or wrists. I also like to put them on my forehead, but that's just me. Cold wash rag or ice packs on your wrists or drape it around your neck to cool your body. These pulse points are areas where blood vessels are close to the skin, so you'll cool down more quickly. Kind of the equivalent of, stirring a drink with ice in it to cool it down faster. When I make my old fashions, around 50 rotations, because you're exposing as much surface area as you can to the temperature. Use box fans. Place box fans facing outside the windows or rooms you're spending time in to blow out hot air and replace it with the cool air inside. So again, you're turning a box fan into an exhaust fan. I like that quite a bit. Okay, if the weather in your area tends to fall between 50 and 70 in the mornings and evenings, opening the windows on both sides of the house during those times can facilitate a cross-flow ventilation system. That was something that was done a ton back in the day. And there was, a lot of the old apartment buildings and a lot of houses would have one of those vent windows above the door, so you didn't have to leave the door open. But it's all about being strategic in when you open windows, how you open windows, how you get air flowing through in the works, all of that. Close your curtains or blinds. Yeah, no shit. Right here, if you have windows that face the sun's direction in the morning through afternoon, close the curtains or blinds over them to keep the sun from coming directly into the house and heating it up. Now, that also goes for in the evening, because for us, we get quite a bit of sun on our picture window late in the day. So be cognizant of where the sun is throughout the day and try to treat your house like a battery, so try to keep the cold energy in, try to keep the hot energy out, or vice versa, depending on the time of year. It's just as important in the summer as it is in the winter. Sleep in breathable linens. This is something I hadn't really heard thrown around a lot, but cotton's one of the most breathable materials. So cotton sheets or blankets could help you keep cool. Somebody in the comments here said the lower the thread count on the cotton, the more breathable it is. I like that quite a bit. Sleep in the basement. This is something that was very common in my kind of hometown, a little bit further back than when I grew up, but it was very common to hear people say they'd go to the basement and sleep. A lot of times kids liked having the basement rooms because it stayed cool in the summertime. But if you can't sleep through the night because you're hot, try sleeping somewhere beside your bedroom if that's an option. Heat rises. So if you have a lower or a basement level in your home, set up a temporary sleeping area there. I like it. Simple. Just think outside the box. The day that Becky and I were absolutely the hottest we were in Tennessee, I had to, we sat and thought about it for a minute. And I'm like, you know what? I have ice, I have Ziploc bags, I have towels, and I have a small fan with very little power. How are we going to kind of make that exponentially cooler for ourselves? And that's what we came up with. So it's all about coming up with a solution, thinking a little outside the box at least. And then here's one that, again, this was also something that was very common back in the day. We just don't think about it now. Cook in the morning with a slow cooker or outside. Oven heat can spread throughout your home. Keep the heat centralized in one area, such as a slow cooker, or cook outdoors on a grill to keep the heat outside. Yeah, it was very common, again, growing up for my dad to barbecue in the summer just to keep the heat outside. And, anything. A lot of the old timers, they used to cook on a wood stove, and they would do it in the summer. And I thought, oh my gosh. So some of them would have an outdoor cook stove for that exact reason. Just anything you can do to keep the heat out of the home. I'm going to jump over to the verticals. I want to take a look in the comments here. We got somebody, Sisk. Hey, Sisk, over on the vertical feed says, by summer, I've usually put up my cotton clothes and switch over to a polyester or merino wool. Also, a polyester blanket, cooling blanket, has been a game changer for me who sleeps hot. Dude, thank you very much. That is all. I never heard of a polyester cooling blanket. So if anybody else has tried that, I got to give that a shot. But great to have you here. Appreciate you. And I see Mitch over in the comments on the shorts, the vertical feed as well. Hey, and we got some more names over here on the horizontal feed. We got what do we got? Oh, One Step Closer says misting fans and swamp coolers help a lot, as well as wet towels on the back of the neck. Absolutely. In humid weather, any kind of air motion helps. In dry weather, air conditioning helps. Simple as that. I find fans work way better in a humid area than you're going to find in a dry, arid environment. That's all. Pippin says, make a redneck swamp cooler fan. Wouldn't be the first time. Love them. Always a great idea. And then Anthony Hurt, great to see you. A new name that I don't think I've seen in here before. Oh man. He says, I live in Louisiana. Sorry about that, buddy. No, I'm just kidding. It's okay. A beautiful place. Just, yeah. Said, I wish we had basements, but we can't because of the water table. It will flood. Even coffins rise out of the ground down here from the water. Dude, that is the makings of a zombie film if I've ever heard it. But yes, man, it's funny. We all kind of get really, really stuck in our ways. And it's for me, it was great to spend 2 months in Tennessee because it reminded me that, the old Alberta weather patterns that I'm used to up here on the prairies in Canada are not where the rest of the world is. And it was good to be down there. I mean, I'm thankful that we didn't have to experience a tornado, but it was good to be down there during a tornado watch, tornado warning, just simply to be reminded of some of the stuff that other folks go through. And again, the old lack of basements thing, it's crazy. Up here in the prairies, most people have them. Where I grew up on the East Coast, most folks have them, but I moved out here and a lot of this blew my mind. Not a lot, but a significant portion of basements on the prairies were built out of wood or pressure treated lumber, and they're absolute junk. I looked after one bank property a few years back where the water literally ran in one end of the basement and out the other. And anyway, so pressure treated. But yes, basements would be nice, Anthony. I mean, for, to gain a couple extra feet, just lay on the floor, I suppose. But yeah, and One Step Closer says no basements in most of Texas since the ground shifts too much. Yeah, it's so crazy. I wonder, I don't know about in Louisiana where there's so much water, but some sort of geothermal system, and not just for heating, of course. Most people talk about using geothermal to heat, but I wonder if a person could make some sort of rudimentary geothermal system to cool as well. So, there's two ways to do geothermal if you haven't seen, but there's the traditional, there's two, but the deep well drilling system where you go way down and tap into the steady kind of, 60-degree temperature of the earth. I can't remember what it is. Or you can also do trenching. So, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So that might be something you could do. Just a thought. And I mean, if you had, I wouldn't want to use, I'm just thinking out loud, but if you could cycle swamp water or nearby water of some sort, anything you could do to pull any kind of thermal energy, cooling thermal energy out of something would be a good idea. But I love the idea of geothermal. Always had an interest in that for sure. So anyway, that's our look at a few ideas for cooling during, a warm spell when we really don't have any other options. And these would be great options for folks. Hopefully we never have to deal with a long-term collapse, but if we ever did, this is the type of shit we're going to have to deal with. Or say you're living off grid and you're, deciding that you need to live off solar. And so the best you can do is a fan for 4 hours a day. I mean, that's basically what we had at the camp for a little while at Delinquent's Gully. So yeah, back over to the, let's check out on the vertical feed. Mitch says, not a lot of basements in Washington State. Didn't realize it till I moved to Wisconsin. It's just wasted space to make your house larger. I get it. I love my basement. I really do. Back up a little. We are closeted hoarders. We're not really hoarders, but man, we do store things quite a bit. But we have worked really, really, really hard to make every inch of our basement work for us. We have a very small bathroom down here that has a ton of stored supplies in it. Every inch. You can go in, you can use the bathroom, and that's about it, other than stored supplies. We had an old cistern that was down here that they used to deliver water, similar to they talked about at the Mexican drought area right now. And so it was basically an 8x8 room that was just 4 enclosed walls of cement that you couldn't get into. And they would the truck would come once a week, fill it full of water, and then you'd have a pump in the home. So it was sitting completely empty, catching cobwebs and spiders and whatever else. And they had busted a hole through about 2 feet by 2 feet to get in there for electrical access. So a few years ago, 3 or 4 now, I decided to rent an air jackhammer. I jackhammered a wall, kind of a 2.5 foot door, so maybe about a 30-inch door through, and I turned it into what I call the prepper pantry. I made a nice door frame, framed it up, washed it, scrubbed it down, painted all the walls white, put shelves in there, and now we keep a ton of our pantry goods in there. And then another back storage room, we cleaned it out, and instead of using it as a storage room, it is now my freeze drying room. So we do the best we can. But yes, basements totally can very quickly become a wasted space because there's another rule that I don't have written down in my rules to live by, but it's a guy I used to work with at the church many years ago. And he always said that your belongings grow to the storage space that you have. And that's really what ends up happening. The more space you have, the more you fill it with junk. So it's the only way to get rid of junk is to also eliminate space to put aforementioned junk into. And Anthony Hurt says basements are the best thing ever. And One Step Closer says, I really want a basement. Basements are awesome. You know, you can make an impromptu storm shelter or bomb shelter in them as well. But yeah, they also do stay significantly cooler and easier to heat. So there's always that. I mean, that's one of our long-term plans for sure here, is that if we ever lost power and the ability to heat, at least upstairs, you know, if our natural gas ever got shut off in the middle of winter for any long-term, you know, we would do our best to bleed our pipes off, and then we would set something up in the basement, because we are going to have a heck of a lot easier time keeping ourselves warm in this basement than we are on the first or second floor. So there you are. All right, here's a cool story. Cool, interesting, mind-blowing. I had no idea this was going on. And if you guys did, you're a better man than I am, Charlie Brown. But this is interesting. Here we go. 13th conservative Oregon county approves measure to secede and join Greater Idaho. I mean, I like Idaho. I didn't know anything was greater about it, but that's neither here nor there. But if anybody knew about this, hey, it's kind of interesting. So let's read in a little bit here, guys. So here it is. And story goes, this comes from MSN.com. Another right-leaning county in eastern Oregon has voted to secede from the Democrat-run state and joining neighboring Idaho. Had no idea this was going on. If I lived in Oregon, I'd want to secede too. But anyway, that's another story. Crook County residents passed the measure by a 53% majority, making it, get this, guys, I hadn't heard this, the 13th county in the entire state to sign on to the movement known as Greater Ohio. I kind of like it. I didn't know this was a thing going on. The voters of Eastern Oregon have spoken loudly and clearly about their desire to see border talks move forward. With this latest result in Crook County, there's no excuse left for the legislator and governor to continue to ignore the people's wishes. I think the thing that speaks the loudest in this entire article is this image right here. And for those who are listening to this on the audio only version, it is a picture of the eastern 2/3 of Oregon, and it is painted red almost entirely. There is 1, 2, 3, 4 small counties that have not joined up with this at this point. So they have an entire, now you need to understand that this is the more sparsely populated area of Oregon. So, you know, to get a majority isn't quite as much work as say it would be in Portland, something like that. Anyway, don't even get me started, but it must say something that people want to leave Oregon and join Idaho. I mean, for many years, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but Idaho is almost like a bit of the butt end of some jokes. And I love Idaho. I think it's great. And I would love to live there as an American prepper if I was into cold weather. But the fact that folks are trying to leave Oregon, secede Oregon, and turn their little geographical haven into part of Idaho is crazy. So check this out. Greater Idaho would see more than half of Oregon's territory leave the Beaver State and join the Republican-run Idaho to the east. The move would shift Idaho's border 200 miles west past the heart of Oregon. Imagine that. Greater Idaho began in earnest in 2020 and quickly began gaining traction, with 11 of the state's 36 counties voting to endorse the idea by 2022. That's pretty insane. Had no idea. Driving the force is a sharp political divide between the more sparsely populated rural and conservative interior of Oregon. No shit, imagine that. And the liberal coastal cities with population hubs like Portland and the state capital, Salem. If Greater Idaho were achieved, Oregon would lose 2/3 of its land, but only 10% of its population. A disparity which has left the conservative interior of the state feeling like their laws are being passed by people with no connection to their lifestyle and beliefs. And there, folks, is what we are dealing with across this great continent, is the divide between the rural and the urban. And it happens more and more and more, where you are finding the urban, the population is becoming more and more concentrated. They are voting left of center for most folks. I really don't vote, don't care to vote. I consider myself an anarchist who is outside of the system. But when it comes down to it, if a person believes a certain way and your beliefs are being twisted around on you based on a large concentration of people in a very small area, anyway, there you go. So this map alone, Greater Idaho, blew my mind. I had no idea this was a movement, let alone such a strong movement at this. The Oregon-Idaho line was established 163 years ago, and it's now outdated. The movement's website said, Greater Idaho seeks to include 17 counties in the movement, made up of 14 full counties and 3 partial counties. Even if the movement gets all the votes it needs, the process would be far from over. Interesting. In order to secede, and this was the part I like learning this kind of stuff from, guys. In order to secede, the state legislatures of both Oregon and Idaho would need to approve the measure. Then the U.S. Congress would also need to approve. State borders have been redrawn in the past, including the territory of Maine becoming a state independent of Massachusetts in 1820, but never before such a large swath of land and citizens. Had no idea, guys. I didn't realize that it had been since 1820 since any of the state's land borders had been redrawn. So we're talking 2 full centuries ago. And it's a movement. There's a lot of these little movements springing up around the country. So yeah, thought you guys would like to hear that story. Let's take a look at the comments from the audience again here. We got the community out tonight. One Step Closer said, that and the Best Virginia movement. Several western counties in Maryland want to leave that state too. I had heard that. Yes. Interesting. Going to go back up to Anthony Hurt. He said, basements are the best thing ever. Did a lot of partying as a kid in Indianapolis in a basement. If you're a Gen Xer or even a late millennial, basements were the place that you went to hang out. I went to my buddy Danny's place. We hung out in the basement. We came to my place. We hung out in the basement, and we shot a mini basketball into a mini Los Angeles Lakers basketball hoop. You know, my friend Alex lived in his basement, so we hung out there all the time. And when we got tired of hanging out in his basement, we went and hung out in his garage, which was a half-finished apartment complex. So it was awesome. But yes, if you guys think back to that 70s show, again, basements were the greatest. Lots of dope smoking in there, wasn't there? I mean, not necessarily, but in that show for sure. Pippin says, what was the old saying? Join or die or something? L2 says, the left will not give up their slaves in Eastern Oregon. And Josh C says, urban is more manipulated largely because they are more dependent. And yeah, that's a big portion of it. And it becomes more and more that way that comes down to many. Yeah, Anthony, I'm 43. See, I had to stop and think about it for a minute. So yes, we're as Gen X or millennial, whatever. I grew up as a Gen Xer. So, if you partied in basements, there's a good chance you would probably say that too. And Pippin says, I don't think I've ever been in the basement, says Florida dude. No, but I've never had to, sweep up sand in my yard either. So there's trade-offs, right? But yeah, the whole urban thing manipulated largely because they're more dependent. Well, anytime you can be more dependent on the government teat, they have way more sway over what you do, because all of a sudden you got to think, do I really want to change something? And that's why the less dependent you are on the entire system, and that's right wing, left wing, center wing, whatever you want to call it, the less dependent you are on any and all of that system, the better off you are. And just a true story, guys, because as much as, there is no such thing as a no strings attached handout. There always comes conditions. The government is just like the mafia. We know this. And they never give you a deal you can't refuse. I mean, they want to, but if you don't refuse, you're going to be in trouble. So, all right. Final article of Stranger Than Fiction for this week. And so I want to share something with you. I don't know if you can see this on the screen, but if you ever run into articles that are behind a paywall and you don't subscribe to them, there is a website called archive.ph. archive.ph, Papa Hotel. And you can throw the article in there and they will show you cached versions of the article. I don't know how or why that works. This is not an illegal site at all. It's a web page capture, just like the Wayback Machine. And I will tell you right now that I am not going to subscribe to almost any news services. I have a couple that I do to support, but for the most part, I'm not going to. But there is a ton of articles that come up on my Google News feed on a regular basis, and more and more and more are getting behind paywall. It's getting to the point where I'm not really sure, but if you're looking to just look at a website, read the article, check out archive.ph. It's a pretty neat little site anyway. So Preppers Rejoice. This one comes from ft.com. Preppers Rejoice, your time has come. This is a British source, and it's kind of interesting. Stockpiling is no longer the preserve of the conspiracy-minded. Here we go. I do love reading mainstream articles when they're talking about the concept and mindset of preppers. So let's see what they have to say about us. And give you a little bit of background on this. Just recently, the UK government came out with suggestions for their people to start prepping. They don't call it prepping. They call it buying things before something bad happens. I don't know what else you call it. They call it making preparations for an event. They want you to do that. And that's important, doing that kind of stuff, being, cognizant of the fact that something can come. And I don't care what you call it. I just want everyone out there to be a little more prepared so we don't have to look out for all these other folks that we can't take care of if something bad happens. Simple as that. So here we go. This is written by a Harriet Fitch Little. What a great name. I love it. That's a very British name. Harriet Fitch Little. During a slack part of the pandemic, a friend served me dinner made almost entirely of quail eggs. And I can't let this go without going by it here, guys, but right here. During a slack part of the pandemic, some people 4 years, 5 years later, still feel the need to justify why they got together with somebody and had a meal over the pandemic. And right here, during the slack part of the pandemic, in other words, at some point during the pandemic, when I justified to myself that it was safe enough to break the government rules that they were handing down on me, I decided to get together with a friend and do exactly what I do all the time anyhow. Yeah, no, don't worry about it. You don't need to justify anything in that. And I'm not reading too much into that. I just know exactly what that is. That was written simply to not have any backlash come against you. Well, yeah, anyway, just leave it be, right? During the slack part of the pandemic, a friend served me a dinner made almost entirely of quail's eggs. I want to tell you, quail was a topic of much interest during the pandemic, through and through. She explained that a sophisticated acquaintance, driven half mad by the atmosphere of doom, had made the chicest panic buy possible and acquired a flock of quails. Yes. Hey, look at this. Oh my goodness. What a great name. So we have a user over on the vertical feed called Shitter Throat Slitter. What a name. And they just come up with hashtag free Joe Exotic. Yep. There you go. So nothing wrong with that. Yeah, that takes me back to the pandemic days pretty quick. There was a lot. It'll be interesting at what point we can look back with a slight nostalgic glasses. I mean, I'm not going to be nostalgic for all the government overreach, but there were certain times that were rather interesting. Those few nights where we sat around and played a lot more board games as a family, just weird things, So anyway, this person, her rather bougie friend, acquired a flock of quails. They ended up interbreeding and pumping out more tiny eggs than they had salt to handle. This author says, I thought fondly of the quail queen this week when Oliver Dowden, that's a British politician, launched Prepare, not Prepper. I almost said it. Prepare, Prepper. Sounds very similar now, doesn't it? A government website that provides citizens with information on how to prep for an emergency. Advice for this hypothetical few days of catastrophe include, you ready for this? Prepping. Sorry, no, I'm just kidding. Advanced purchasing of essentials such as bottled water and non-perishable foods. Many things that we were all slammed on for many days. Advanced purchasing of essentials such as bottled water, non-perished foods. Although Dowden did not use the term, news outlets surely did. He wants, they wrote, for us to become preppers. There's not that there's anything wrong with that. The old saying, right? But it's true. I mean, the concept of prepping for many years was you were looked at as a bit of a pariah, a bit of an outcast, maybe even a political dissident or worse. And now it's called being a prudent civilian Imagine that. For a long time, prepping, here we are, was the preserve of the conspiracy-minded, people with the distinctly male pastimes of digging big holes in their gardens and anticipating the total breakdown of law and order with disconcerting relish. And I don't mean the kind you put on a hot dog. Now, here's the deal, guys. I would love to dig a great big hole in my garden out back and build myself a storm/bomb shelter/root cellar/water storage. I don't care. I would love to do that. Now, the article goes on, as someone with quite different hobbies of growing my own vegetables and entry-level foraging, I know the characteristic to be increasingly untrue. In other words, it's not just a bunch of crazy people who are prepping. Yeah, I'm glad you finally learned that. Thank you. In my quest for answers to questions such as, why does my nettle soup taste funny? That being nettles, I have discovered that preppers now pepper, say that 5 times fast, preppers now pepper all of online communities, and they represent a diverse demographic. Yes, very true. There's nothing wrong, not that there's anything wrong with that. You know, I was at the hockey game last night. We went to the Edmonton Oilers playoff game, and we had a hell of a time. And at one time, and I'm going to be honest or transparent, I guess. When hockey, you know, traditionally hockey was a very white bread sport, and I don't know how else to put it, but it truly was. And I got kind of excited when I started seeing new Canadians getting interested in hockey. You know, you would see guys of Sikh background and of Islamic background and of many different countries starting. And, you know, we went last night, and it was really cool to see a really diverse group of people there. And I know that sometimes that word is thrown around in a, I don't know, just in a weird sense that it doesn't matter, but it was really, really neat. And that's what I love about going to, say, events like Self-Reliance Festival. Now, it's not super culturally diverse there, but it is most definitely politically diverse. And that's how I enjoy that. I love, and take however you want, but this line right here, growing interest among those minority groups and left of center, and preppers represent a diverse demographic. And I think that's great because, again, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you do. As long as you don't hurt me and steal my shit, I'm happy. And if I don't have to feed you in a collapse scenario, all the better. So why not encourage all walks of life, all demographics to become preppers? I love the idea, and I think we all should. So it's kind of cool. I hope I tiptoed and didn't kowtail around that subject too much, but it was just something that was on my mind from last night. It was really cool I hadn't been to a hockey game in a few years, and yeah, it was really neat to see an eclectic group of fan base, which I kind of liked. So anyway, here we go. Climate change and a fear of pandemic are among the things motivating the new wave of preppers. That sounds like a music genre, the new wave of preppers, or maybe a new type of new Pepsi or something. I don't know. In March, Reuters reported that the number of Americans readying for disaster had doubled in size to about 20 million since 2017. A shift it claimed was largely due to growing interest among those minority groups and left of center. So in 7 years, we went from 10 million to 20 million. That's 100% increase in preppers in the U.S. 5% of the entire population of the entire U.S. actually. That's really cool. And I just wanted to shout out to L2 Survive. If you haven't left yet, he's dropping out this evening. Got to go to sleep. Great show. Thank you, man. And also said China has ordered all citizens to buy 1 gram of gold times 1 billion people. That will put a hurting on the gold market, at least a little bit. I think it would. So, of course, this growing community is not any one thing. Some preppers think home canning your tomatoes is the path to food security. Others favor food so ultra-processed and indestructible that it could survive a rocket trip to Mars. One thing I was surprised to learn was that almost everyone agrees on the genuine usefulness of keeping quails. I just had to chuckle. Quails were such a first-year pandemic thing, but yes, almost everybody agrees that quails are great. There's almost no work in cleaning them if you want to eat them. The eggs, I mean, you can raise quail anywhere. You can raise them on, a New York City apartment building rooftop. You could raise them clandestinely in a suburban garage. You could have them in a closet somewhere as long as they were vented properly and fed properly. But yeah, it's just, they're really cool. So, and here's a great paragraph to end out this article, and I thought it was kind of cool. So, as election season messages go, tapping into a sense of panic is actually a safer move than one might think, cutting across demographics that it certainly could have 10 years ago. Now, I don't know what that has to say about popular culture or the mass media or anything along those lines, but a simple fact that a topic of panic cuts across all demographics and all party lines is maybe a little bit on the scary side. It makes me sad. I see the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas coming out of school being scared to death that the world's going to end and saying, hey, I'm just going to spend my money. I'm going to eat my food. I'm going to live at home with mom and dad until climate change causes the entire world to destroy. Well, you know what? That isn't going to happen. The entire world's not going to come to ruin. Bad shit might happen over the next few years. Absolutely. But the worst thing I can say is sitting on your haunches and doing absolutely nothing. That makes me sad. I hate to see people scared to death like that. And I really, really hope that the next generation comes up with a bit of sense of optimism. And I think that's a bit on us too, folks, is to encourage that next generation to be a little more optimistic, a little more entrepreneurial minded too. Hey. All right. So that is the end of Stranger Than Fiction for this week, guys. I had some interesting articles. The news seemed a little thin on prepper relating content this week, but nonetheless, I guess that's a good thing when it comes right down to it. And just before I went live, I did read that Donald Trump was found guilty, so it'll be interesting to see where that pans out. Hey, so all right. What a good show this evening. It's good to see. I like seeing some of the new names in here, guys. Anytime you're around, I should give you a shameless plug to join the Telegram group. If you're not on Telegram, the link is in all the show notes, every video I ever make. It's where all the cool kids hang out. It's what we call delinquents, the delinquents for the workshop hang out there. And it's a really good place to get your questions answered and to answer other people's questions and just become part of the community. All right, here we go.
He's dead. They're all dead. Everyone. You and I are in a dead world. And I'm glad it's dead. Cheap, honky-tonk of a world.
Coming up next is Workshop Wasteland. All right, so this one is Workshop Wasteland, where we take a look at pop culture, dystopian, post-apocalyptic, end of the world, whatever it happens to be, something a little more fun, because even preppers need to entertain themselves on occasion. And if that means, with a binder full of DVDs in an underground bomb shelter someday, well, there you go. But anyway, I decided, again, I told you this was a bit of a slow news week, and I've been wanting to incorporate some classic movie reviews into this segment. And so, like I said, Workshop Wasteland is all about popular culture dealing with the end of the world and prepping lessons and all kinds of cool things. So tonight I wanted to share with you a film from 1951. This is the very first. Okay. It's the very first apocalyptic film that deals with nuclear annihilation. I watched it maybe about a year ago now, laying in bed. I think I saw it on like Daily Motion or Vimeo or one of those, YouTube clones that have been around for 150 years. Somebody had it on there for free in like 15-minute bite-sized segments. And I liked it enough that I rented it on YouTube a few months later for like $3.99. And if you're wondering, that is where you find this movie to watch. You can rent it on YouTube, Apple TV, or Amazon Prime, I believe. So the movie is called Five, and here's the poster. I'll bring it up for you. It is definitely melodramatic. It was written by one of the top radio writers of the time, so it definitely feels a bit like some of the old radio melodramas, but it nonetheless is rather entertaining and has a pretty cool story behind it. But like I said, it's the very first nuclear post-apocalyptic film. You can rent it for $3.99 on YouTube. It was written by, the guy's name was Arch Oboler, and he was a famous radio script writer. The tagline for the film was, 4 men and 1 woman are the last 5 people on Earth. This is their story. Dun dun. Sorry, that would have been great to have the sound effects to Law and Order come in after that. But yes, this is their story. Synopsis, if you're wondering, this is an interesting one. The film's storyline involves 5 survivors, 1 woman, 4 men, of an atomic bomb disaster. It appears to have wiped out the rest of the human race while leaving all infrastructure intact. The five come together at a remote, isolated hillside home where they try to figure out how to survive and come to terms with the loss in their own personal worlds. This is way more of a relationship movie than most. This is one where you have a bunch of people. It's one of my favorite kind of genres. It's a small, low-budget film that takes place mainly in one location with just a few people. So it's a walking and it's the good type of walking and talking type movies. It's the claustrophobic, interrelational type movies that really jump up and grab you. The tension gets ramped up each time a new person shows up and they interfere with their social structure. So you start out with a couple of people and they connect, and then somebody else comes along and it puts you on edge because you're like, how many more survivors are there in this world? And it really is just this dilapidated, burnt out nuclear wasteland. So the five main characters, and you'll almost say these sound like a joke. These five people walk into a bar and have a drink, but their archetypes are character archetypes for a reason. Five characters: a frail pregnant lady named Roseanne, elderly bank clerk named Mr. Barnstaple, his younger caretaker, a black man named Charles, a poet and philosopher, Michael, a poet and a philosopher at the end of the world, I know, and then Eric, a rich, bougie mountain climber. So, as you can imagine, a lot of tension and some mental breakdowns happen. The old banker gradually gets sicker from radiation poisoning. Eric turns out to be a nasty racist. Their garden is mysteriously destroyed, and Roseanne goes into labor. None of this ruins the movie because they're all plot points that just further the tension. It's definitely worth seeing. It's 100% in black and white if you didn't guess. I mean, it is from 1951. The script is over the top, but the acting really isn't that bad. It's a really old film. The sound is not perfect, but it builds tension and atmosphere. Worth enough for giving it a shot, considering how low budget the film was. It's not a perfect film by any means, but I would say it's definitely worth seeing. Some of those tropes being developed in the early movies, some of those post-apocalyptic tropes that we have seen through a million storylines going forward, this is where they really birthed, at least in the nuclear genre. I would give it a rating of 3 civil defense survival biscuits out of 5. It is the very first of what I would call prepper porn going forward. It's worth checking out. If you're ever, indoor on a rainy night and you want to turn something on to check it out, it's definitely worth it. But expect a 75-year-old black and white film. Expect over-the-top melodramatic acting. Don't expect top-notch, set dressings and, no expense spared to background sets, because that's not going to happen. But if you're into, Frank Lloyd Wright as an architect, most of this thing is filmed inside or outside of one of his very well-known buildings. So anyway, if you're looking for something totally different, I like to try to pull something out of a rabbit hole for you. This is one. So there you go. All right, let's move on to...
Now you stay on the back roads, and you keep your gun handy. Our country is still full of thieving, murdering patriots.
Get ready for I Read It on the Internet. Before we jump into that, I just want to shout out to Mr. Sean Mills of Hack My Homestead. He is over on the vertical feed in the shorts right now. So it's good to see him over there. And so this next segment is I Read It on the Internet, and that is REDDIT. Intentionally misspelled, but no, it's where we go to our preppers on Reddit. If you don't know what that is, well, that used to be called the front page of the internet. I don't know if that would still be as appropriate as it is today, but this is where we pick the top story from the Our Preppers subreddit over there for the week. Give it a look down, give it some conversation, some commentary, and we go from there. This one is from Just Some Guy 606, and it says... this was posted on 4chan back in 2013, so it's 11 years old. In my opinion, it's pretty spot on. The collapse, with quotation marks, has already happened, and this guy seems to have foretold it. I must admit, when I read this, and then the date, I was flabbergasted. What do you think of this below? So here it is. It says, there'll be no collapse, the way some of the people think of it. It's not going to be like the movie Dawn of the Dead or whatever, when one day suddenly shit hits the fan and prices skyrocket and everyone begins to riot and the SS comes marching down the street to kill everybody. There'll be no happening. It's far more insidious than that. Read the poem The Hollow Men by T.S. Eliot, and you will understand. Eliot is not one that I've ever gotten into reading, but at some point I probably should. Pretty sure he was a postmodern poet, and some of his stuff is pretty esoteric, but he definitely has a bent toward the end of the world, and I'd love to dig into it sometime. You'll just notice that every day simple things will become a little more expensive. You'll see family and friends less. You'll find that in time you care less about them. Every day you'll find yourself lowering your standards for everything: work, food, relationships, etc. Job security will no longer exist as a concept. You'll notice houses and apartments shrinking. People will start hanging on to clothing longer and longer. Less people will get married. Even less will have children. People will engross themselves in distractions, technological distractions, and fantasy, while never truly experiencing the real world. This was written 12 years ago, 11 years ago. Definitely something that happens more and more today. Anyway, whatever dream people used to have about what their lives were going to be will become that a distant memory. The only thing left for them will be the reality of their debt and their poverty. And every minute of every day, they will be told, "You are stupid, ugly, and weak, but together we are free, prosperous, and safe." That is the collapse, the reduction of the American man into a feudal serf, incapable of feeling love or hate, incapable of seeing the pitiful nature of the situation for what it is, or recognizing his own self-worth. That is sad. That is bleak. That is the description of modern civilization. That is almost Orwellian in nature. It reads like a page from 1984. It's sad. It doesn't have to be the way. It's why we like to step outside the system. It's why we like to grow our own, either grow our own food or make relationships with locals who do grow their own food. It's why we like to have off-grid properties. It's like why we want to store water. It's why we want to be entrepreneurs. All of the above, because we do not want to be part of the pitiful nature of the situation that he is describing here. And do I think it has to happen? I do not. I do not think it has to happen. I think that we can change a lot of what happens, but it's an interesting insight. Responding to that was Icy Medicine 495. A lot of serious major SHTF preppers don't account for shit hits the fan. Might not be an on-off light switch that happens instantly. Instead, it might be a gradual decline or a dimmer switch where things slowly get darker, worse. Kind of like driving home last night. We left the city at 9:30 and we drove for 3 hours. And it never really got completely dark the whole way home. The sun just kept setting and setting and setting and setting behind us. And by the time I was pulling into Provost at 12:30, you could still see a sliver of light behind us on the horizon. And before too long, that sliver of light was going to come around and be in front of us on the horizon as well. But it got dark so gradually that dusk just seemed to hold on forever. And that's the idea, is that a collapse scenario like this would be very, very, it's the old stupid analogy of the frog in the boiling pot that really isn't true at all or something, but that's what it is. It would be very, very, very slow, almost to the point where you don't notice it until all of a sudden you got to turn your high beams on, and then it might just be too late. A lot of people, this was the best line of all of this, and this is the main reason I shared this, was for this one right here. A lot of people say they'll do Project X when shit hits the fan, but I ask them, why not do it now? I love that. What a great, I don't know who Icy Medicine is, but what a great insight. Install your solar panels today. Plant your garden this spring. Saw firewood for the winter. Practice your skills now, not just for the future, but for practical usefulness of now. Build resilience to your everyday life. That way, if shit does ever hit the fan, it's not a mountain of a disturbance to your everyday life, but a speed bump of adjustment. I couldn't put that better even if I tried. If I sat down and rewrote that 10 times, it wouldn't be as good as that. But in other words, if there's something you can do now to make your life better down the road and better now, do it. Don't put it off. Don't say, I'm waiting for the day to do this. No, do it now. Prepping is one of those things that's supposed to make your life better, whether shit ever does hit the fan or it doesn't. Who wouldn't want to be an entrepreneur and make more money? Who wouldn't want to have extra water stored up in case something bad happens? Who wouldn't want to learn the skills of how to garden? Any of those can be transferred into money-making opportunities for you if it ever comes to that. So definitely something to consider, folks. I love it. I don't always agree with everybody over on the subreddit of preppers, but I do certainly enjoy sitting down and reading some of the stuff they have to share. That is for sure. All right, let's dive in to the next segment.
Nothing like eating under an open sky, even if it is radioactive.
Dropping the dime on precious metals. All right, this segment is Dropping the Dime on Precious Metals, so aptly named by Byron Roberts. What a great name. And this is where, for the most part, we take a look at silver, gold. I never really talk about any of the other ones, but precious metals is one of my passions. It's definitely not something I would say to go and invest all your money in, but I think it's great to have a small percentage of it for certain. But this is where I try to pick an interesting article to maybe inform you a little bit about the goings on in the silver and gold world. And if you didn't hear about this, I think this is something that appeals to us quite a bit as preppers. Kenya's Ruto lauded Zimbabwe's ZIG as boost to economic prospects. So if you didn't hear about this, about a month ago, maybe a month and a half now, Zimbabwe launched their own gold-backed currency. Now, I need to fill you in a little bit because before you get really excited, I believe this is their 6th currency in 15 years, and 5 of them failed miserably. So just because it's gold-backed does not mean that it will 100% succeed. But I think starting off on a proper foundation is not a bad thing at all. They've had hyperinflation for a lot of time. So Kenyan President William Ruto hailed Zimbabwe's gold-backed currency as a potential driver of economic recovery in the South African nation. The ZIG, short for Zimbabwe Gold, was launched earlier this month and the 6th attempt to create a functioning local currency. Hack by Homestead said, 2 streams on YouTube. Hey, all again. Yes, so there's a vertical stream going out to the shorts feed and the traditional horizontal feed for all the regular viewers here. It's something we've been trying. It's having modest success so far. We're kind of casting out some bait and pulling in some new viewers. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's something that YouTube has been pushing pretty hard. And yeah, kind of interesting. All right. So the ZIG, short for Zimbabwe Gold, was launched earlier this month and is the 6th attempt to create a functioning local currency. Wah, wah. Zimbabwe has been battling exchange rate instability and surging inflation for years. The ZIG is backed by 2.5 tons of gold and 100 million in reserves held by the central bank. Zimbabwe's untapped substantial reserves of copper and lithium, as well as gold, platinum, silver, and other precious metals, represent tremendous wealth, the president said. If it is appropriate that they should be, it is appropriate that they should be deployed back to the national currency. So I love that. They've tried everything else. They're like, hey, what do we have? We have all kinds of gold. Why don't we back it with gold? The one thing that most currencies that have succeeded in the long term have been backed by, right? Earlier this week, Zimbabwe's vice president said that the ZIG is a step toward abandoning the use of U.S. dollars in their economy. They use a lot of U.S. dollars in their economy. The previous local unit, the Zimbabwe dollar, had lost value every single trading day of the year. Its slide prompted a widespread preference for U.S. dollars, which are used for more than 80% of all transactions in Zimbabwe. The ZIG banknotes will be released next Tuesday, according to the central bank, which is on an awareness drive to promote the new currency. So if you hadn't heard, Zimbabwe launched a gold-backed currency. What an interesting concept. Let's slide over just a little further. And here it is, another one. This one's from Bloomberg. And again, Zimbabwe's new currency, the ZIG, has brought with it deflation. Well, I guess that's kind of what you want when you've had hyperinflation. The only way to adjust that is to go back the other way, I suppose. Zimbabwe has become synonymous with runaway inflation, is now contending with deflation. In its first inflation reading compound using ZIG, launched on April 5th, consumer prices fell 2.4% in May from a month earlier. The Zimbabwe dollar had lost 80%. Anyway, it is basically, I believe if I read correctly, it gained 2.5% on the US dollar over its first month in active trading. Nothing too crazy, but it seems to be something that's a little bit stable, something to keep an eye on for sure. You know, it's every bit as exciting as, you know, a country deciding they want to try Bitcoin for the first time. But in this instance, you're backing it by something tangible, like, you know, a precious metal of gold. And we'll see where it goes, guys. But if you guys see anything interesting like this in the precious metals market, feel free to send me emails as we go along. I mean, therealtimcook@gmail.com. That's TherealTimcook@gmail.com. any interesting articles you get. I love getting them. So much of what I share with you guys comes from other folks throughout the week for sure. So, all right. So that is diving into precious metals right there, dropping the dime on precious metals. So next, this is just a small one, and this is something I don't do every week, but it's called Must Be Nice. And it's where I share an inspirational meme, a meme of some sort that I found, or, again, a rule to live by. And this one was really simple. It comes from Motivational Life, and it says, failure is not opposite of success. It is part of success. And when I saw that, that slapped me right across the face, because if there's anything I've struggled with over the years, it's when I think I failed. I hate sucking at things. I hate not being good at something. But I've had to embrace over the years that if you want to become great at something, you have to fail many, many times. And I don't mean fail as in permanent. I mean trying something and not being real successful at first. The most successful people in the world have sucked donkey balls for a long time before they got good. And this is something that we all need to embrace. And this is something that we are really, really struggling with our current staff at the new daycare, because folks of a certain age are not used to failing or failure or criticism or coaching, any of that. And it's okay. I want to do my best to get them to the point where they embrace constructive criticism and embrace screwing up and failing and being like, no, we're not going to fire you because you failed. I just want you to learn from it. So failure is not opposite of success. It is part of success. They're inextricably linked. They cannot be separated. They are as much a part of one another as peanut butter and jelly. But yes, in order to be successful, folks, you got to go out there and fail over and over again. And I'm not a big fan of failure, because the title of my presentation at SRF this year was Failure is Not an Option. So real quick, I forgot to cover in dropping the dime, but you have 2 days left to pre-order the latest silver round from the workshop. This one is the Y2K. It's the first in our Modern Apocalypse series at the moment, and it's actually looking like a pretty good price with the run up on silver a bit, but we bought it just before, well, actually in the midst of the run up, but $70 for the 1 ounce coin with the Y2K logo on the front, the TT benchmark on the back, and you're also going to get free shipping and a commemorative patch that's only available in there as well. So we do these. We've been doing silver orders once a year. This is going to be limited. There's only going to be 50 of them struck, and I believe we've sold 20 already. So once the pre-sale is over, the price is going to go up to $80. I'm not going to actively promote it at that point, because it's going to be I'm going to start promoting it again once I have the physical silver in my hand. So the people who pre-ordered and saved $10, you'll get your shipment as soon as they show up. And then what's left will be what's left. But if you want to get it at the $70 price as opposed to the $80 price afterwards, make sure you sign up using the Shopify link in the description, because it's all we have. People love the silver runs. This is the third one we've done. We're going to do another one toward the end of this year. So there you go. All right. What do we got next? We have this week in the workshop, and it's been a busy week, folks. It's been a good week. It's been a week of building the life we want to live. I want to tell you that. So here we go. Let's, again, why do I do this week in the workshop? For motivation, inspiration, and accountability. Hopefully some of the things I do will inspire other people to say, hey, I could try that too. Hopefully what I do, some people will be like, well, shit, I need to get off my ass and do that. And then also, I want to be able to share with you guys what I've done so that I'm actually doing shit and not just talking about doing shit, as I talk about doing shit. So here we are. So right after the show last week, Becky and I proceeded to crack, scramble, and freeze 33 dozen eggs. My brother-in-law's father, I don't know what that makes him, to me, nothing really, has an immense stockpile of farm fresh eggs. And so we bought 33 dozen because that was I don't even know how I got to that number. It came to an even price. So I picked that many up, getting ready to run them through the freeze dryer as soon as I finished the liver treats for the dogs. Next, me and my son-in-law and I cleaned up and started rehabbing an apartment unit that was a little bit under the weather. Let's put it this way. It was an eviction. The dude broke two closet doors, put his fist through another, gouges in a bunch of the drywall, and then stains all across the carpet. Oh, also, I believe he smoked in the bathroom and put a few cigarette burns in the linoleum. Completely against his lease. But anyway, there we are. We're dealing with it. We're fixing it up. Replaced two doors. Decided to try my hand at patching the fist-size hole in the bathroom door with spray foam and spackle and a couple other things. We're going to see how it turns out. But so far, I've been pretty happy with it. My son-in-law did an incredible job cleaning up the kitchen, but it was an absolute mess. It sucks. It's been a while since I've had an eviction. Been a while since I've had to do anything like that. Also, we installed a new dishwasher, and by we, I say my son-in-law and I've been teaching him the ropes of the property management business. And what did I end up doing? I laid next to him on the floor as he uninstalled the dishwasher. It was a hell of a time. He did great. Never did one before. I talked him through it. I only did the dad thing for a minute where I'm like, here, give me the tool and let me show you how to do it. But he did 99% of it, and I was really proud of him. He did great. So definitely something. I'll probably do one more with him before I let him do the next one by himself, but he did great. Last weekend, I assembled a vinyl shed from Costco for Mama. I've talked about that a bit, but it's definitely something that needed to be done. We're making some changes in the backyard. Took me 2 hours. I filmed it. We'll turn it into some content at some point, but I do love those Costco vinyl shells. We went yard sailing. Actually, we, as in me and Mama, Mrs. Toolman, went yard sailing last weekend and picked up a shit ton of cool prepping gear. Well, not all of it was cool prepping gear. Some of it was just cool stuff I wanted, but I picked up some vintage cameras. Then I picked up one of those walk-behind disc seaters. That was a great piece of gear. A cast iron frying pan, a Coleman stove, a Mr. Buddy heater, an old meat grinder, a hurricane lamp, a bit and brace, if you don't know what those are, the old hand-drive drills and drill bits, and a whole bunch more. Had a hell of a time. We really enjoyed ourselves, and we're going again Saturday. I might even put some of these items up for sale on the Shopify. If there's interest in some rehabbed prepper gear for a decent price, there'll be shipping involved, but overall, I still think it'll get to you for a better price than if you were to buy it brand new and a better quality, because these are mostly antiques. Let me know, because I'm thinking about putting some of it up on the Shopify. And of course, I can ship it from my U.S. post office box, which will save you and I a bunch of money. I did 4 batches of liver treats in the freeze dryer this week. It would have been 5, except I forgot to hit start on one of them. And so they just sat there continuously freezing. So that was a pain, but the dogs love them. You just can't give them too many, because the little dogs get the you-know-whats when they eat too many, but there you go. I did a review video this week on the Fire Maple stove. If you haven't checked that out, man, I love that little product. And then I did one on the Big Blue solar panel. And if you haven't checked that out, man, I like that product. Sounds like an echo in here, but excuse me. If you've ever asked yourself, why doesn't Tim review more shitty products? It's because I do a shit ton of research before I buy most products. And so very few products do I buy that are going to absolutely disappoint me beforehand. When companies send me some things, then yeah, you might get some shitty reviews. But overall, the stuff that I buy tend to be really well researched before that. I got 2 new shirts from John Willis at SOE. The first one said, less 1984 and more 1776. Love that one. But my favorite is that early 90s neon splatter pattern with the SOE logo on it. I got a ton of good comments at the Oilers game last night. It was a lot of fun. Took Charlotte to a track meet. She did great. I'm proud of her. I got to shout her out for that. She qualified for 2 out of her 3 events. And so next week we are going for another full day track meet for her regional finals. This is where she'll get medals or ribbons. So I'm really proud of her in the 400 meter and the 4x100 meter relay. So she did great. And she jumped. Here's the other thing about needing to suck to get better. She jumped her personal best 7 meters in the triple jump. So proud of you, Charlie, if you're listening this evening. And I took my son-in-law to his very first Oilers playoff game, my very first playoff game period last night. We had a ton of fun, met a lot of cool people. And yeah, it was a really good time to be out with family for sure. All right, let's take a quick look here and back to the community. Pippin says, if at first you do not succeed, keep on sucking till you do succeed. that sounds like the little vacuum that could. And then Lone Canadian, good to see you, brother, says it's been a week of success, success, and more failure. Sometimes you just got to embrace the suck. Yes, you do, because it's the only way. The only other way is to wallow in the suck and never come out of it. And that's no good for anybody. So yes, embrace the suck, move on, and go from there. So yeah, that is this week in the workshop, and we'll move on to...
It's the apocalypse, end of days, the judgment day, the end of the world, my friend.
Let's dig into the community mailbag. This is the community mailbag, where we take a look at some feedback that I get from the crazy workshop community that is the delinquents. And here we go. So a couple of things. First off, one little announcement. Brian and I have been talking about it, and it looks like we are going to do a couple of work days this year pre-SRF. Now, the reason we're doing it is to just give people more flexibility in their schedule. I know what it ends up meaning is that maybe not everybody will get together all on the same day, but what we're planning, I believe, and I will announce 100% all the details down the road, but the main thing we're thinking about is a Wednesday work day, a Thursday work day, and then a Friday kind of social barbecue type thing. So the work days will be more like come work, stay on site if you want. We'll feed you. It'll probably be like sandwiches and things like that, more cold food. And then the social day will just be, we could finish up little projects if we want, but it's more about socializing and having a barbecue. So that looks like what we're going to do, because a few things. I realize I don't need to be at SRF for the Friday before. I just don't need to be. I'd rather be at Delinquents Gully hanging out with, our folks. I think it would be a lot of fun. So that's what we're going to do. I'll give you the exact details pretty soon, but there it is. All right. I got 4 pieces of feedback this week. First one comes from Ryan Klauser. Ryan, it was great to get the email from you. He come over and joined the book club the other day, but he said, hey, listening to Atlas Shrugged Book Club, and I've been inspired to join in. We are leaving on vacation tomorrow, and I'm planning to listen to it on the 15-hour drive to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I should be able to catch up to you by the end of the week and listen along with you through the end of the book. It's been like 5 years since I've listened to a book on tape, and I'm excited to listen to one again. Thanks for the motivation. Well, thanks for the nice words, Ryan. I'm absolutely excited. I'm glad you became part of the book club community. And starting in June, we're going to be bringing back the post-apocalyptic book club as we finish up Atlas Shrugged, or at least continue Atlas Shrugged. It was just something we didn't do while I was stateside in Tennessee. And now that we're back, June will be the first iteration of it, and we're going to keep going on. So it'd be good to have you, Ryan. If anybody doesn't know what that is, we do it on a Friday night, and you can join the live chat, or you can join the live video stream if you want. I love having folks there. It's always a lot of fun. So if you're looking to join, come by and be part of it. Next, Chris Dixon posted a poster for an upcoming event in Calgary. So for all of you Western Canadians, this is pretty cool. But my buddy Brad, a 5 times August, is going to be doing a Stay Free concert in Calgary on September 12th. I got to be there. I told him if he ever did an event in Canada that I would want to come on stage and introduce him. I don't know if I would ever be able to have that honor, but I would absolutely love to do that. So if I get a chance, I'm going to meet up with him. I'd love to get there and do an interview with him or do something. Anyway, I just want to see the dude. But he's going to be putting together a Stay Free concert in Calgary. So if you're interested, check it out. Now, something else Chris Dixon shared, and this was the one thing, every week there's something that comes out of our Telegram group. And this was the thing that absolutely stuck with me all week. And I just couldn't shake it. And I thought it was such an insightful little piece of lore from his grandparents. But it said, so Chris says, I've been looking for some land. And I remember my grandmother, who was a Cree teaching elder, once said to me, pick a spot and stand there for 100 breaths, and the land will tell you if it wants you there or not. I've been to 10 spots over the past 3 weeks, and I returned to the 3rd place today because of what she said. I think I found it. I'd never heard that before, but I love the thought of it. Just the fact that you stand there, you don't do anything, you don't say anything, you just let your mind do what it needs to do and see what the land says to you. And no matter where you stand on that kind of stuff, there's something powerful in doing that exact thing. So take that piece of advice, use it effectively in your life for sure. I just got to pop back over here for a minute. Pippin says, are there camping spots available at Delinquents Gully? There will be as many camping sites as you need. We have I don't know, 5 or 6 maybe clear. There'd be 5 or 6 spots for sure. There'd be no shortage of spots for you to hang, hang a tent anywhere you want, or, I'm just trying to think if we could get a small camper in there. Probably not yet. Maybe, I don't know. But, you could put hammocks between trees. Definitely lots of areas for tents. I believe Becky and I and the girls will be staying in the cabin. So there'll definitely be camping spots available. And Byron Roberts says always a good time. Absolutely. Worm, WERM from Telegram said, hey, question, what happens to water pressure when going from, say, 3/4 inch spigot to 1 inch or 1.5 inches, then back down to a 3/4 inch hydrant? Does it just even out? And I wasn't exactly sure even how to explain this, but before I even had the chance, Brian Young, good buddy of mine, decided to answer the question. And this is the beauty of our community. It's what I love. He said, static pressure is the same. The 1 inch will have less friction loss than the 3/4, so you'll get better pressure when the spigot is open. That is, if your 1 inch section is very long. He says, I got a 3/4 inch meter connected 2 inch line, neck down to 1.25 inches for about 1/4 mile, and then back down to 3/4 inch. So yeah, it basically, the static pressure stays the same. You'll have some friction loss, but there you go. I hope that helps. It's clear as mud for you. And finally, this was an email I got from Daniel a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot to share it, but I really meant to. But if I did, remind me, but I don't think I did. So here we go. He said, hey, Tim, I've been listening to the Hurricane Center podcast, which has been interesting in itself. But in one, they mentioned an awful lot of deaths and injuries happen after the storm has come through, and people are cleaning up and running generators. Carbon monoxide poisoning was a big cause, and I imagine chainsaws and spring-loaded trees are another. Food for thought and possible podcasts. I'm in Colorado, but I find old disaster lessons very interesting. Thanks, Daniel. Yes. So I really, that was just a thought I needed to share with you guys was, again, the disaster after the disaster. Remember that, right? When you're cleaning up, you're not always safe. When you're performing CPR first aid on somebody, remember, look out for yourself too. Pay attention, even when you think the coast is clear. But yeah, carbon monoxide, chainsaws, and spring-loaded trees, something to think about during the cleanup for sure. Pippin says, may mount the roof tent on the Nissan truck for camping at the gully. I would love that. It'd probably be just as nice as the Comfort Inn, because I know you stayed there last time, and I stayed there for about 10 days, roughly the same time. And yeah, you might as well come down and stay in the gully with us. So we'd love to have folks out there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. Myself, Becky, myself, and the girls will be there. Brian and Corey will be there. And we don't know exactly what all we're going to work on. I know I have a couple of projects in mind. I've been really wanting to get the cabin insulated and put up wall boards in the interior. And I really want to build a dam for the stream running through so we can do some sort of water lift of some sort. But what I really want is stored capacity within the stream itself. So we're going to look at building a field expedient dam. And depending on how many folks show up, maybe we'll pick up some more lumber and we could build another 8x8 cabin, because Brian and I have got that down to a science now. So there's no end to the work we could do out there. Brian's going to be working his ass off all summer. He carried something like 70 cinder blocks up the hill to his permanent campsite here soon. And yeah, can't wait to see everybody for sure. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode this evening. I love these This Week in Prepping news. They're always a lot of fun. They're really well received on the back end. They do really good, not just in audience interaction when I get to sit here and chat with you guys, because these are some of the most laid back, these are the more preparation intensive episodes. This takes me about twice as long to put together as, say, an interview show for the most part. But once it's together, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing them. I know a lot of folks, I get a lot of good feedback from it. And definitely get good numbers from the episodes too on top of that. And if you ever wonder how the YouTube channel is going, it's going really well, guys. We just hit 15,000 subscribers, but everybody's concept of what success is slightly different. And the fact that I'm able to help as many people as I am and also make a pretty damn good living, people are pretty surprised that we could live off of what I make from the YouTube channel now. So there's that. So thank you guys. I appreciate you turning this from a hobby into a passion into, an income that actually could support the family. So thanks, guys. I love it. And if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be here doing it. And I was doing it because I knew everybody would be here eventually, and you showed up, and thank you for that. So I hope you enjoyed this evening's show, guys. It is still plenty light out here. I'm going to get the audio ripped and uploaded for you. We'll get the show evening for another inspirational interview. And I can actually take a look. I believe I know who we have coming up. I've got a bunch booked for everyone. Let's see if we can find it and let you know right quick. But yeah, so Sunday evening, we got a new video coming out tomorrow with John Willis, and it's the first half of the so Sunday is going to be a little early. Sunday is going to be 2 hours earlier than the normal time. And we got Jake from Ravenwood Acres. And I made a change in the schedule for him because he is very overseas at the moment and away from home. And I really wanted to bring him on the show. And his time zone is so off from ours that we needed to. So Sunday evening is going to be a couple hours earlier, and it's going to be a hell of a time. Jake, I consider him a close friend, somebody that I've sat down and shared bourbon with, but we've had a lot of good conversations with. So look out for him coming up. Tomorrow's a video with John Willis. It's the first half of the Patreon interview. There's a ton of great clips in there that he talks about how to build a content creation business. So yeah, hang in there. Some great videos, some great reviews coming up for you next week. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.